When painting with watercolor, we struggle with finding the right colors. This is why a good exercise is to master painting with only one color. When you paint with one color only, you eliminate all the distractions and focus only on the composition and on the values. In this video, I will show you how to paint with only one color, the focus being a busy street from an urban scene. Hi everyone, and welcome to Color Art Emotion. If you enjoyed this content, leave a like and subscribe to this channel to never miss a video. And, as usual, let's start by getting familiar with our subject and analyze the scene. Looking at this black and white scene, you can immediately notice the busy street vibe in the foreground, very characteristic to Istanbul, with many cars and other entourage elements like street lamps, circulation signs, trees, all together helping to convey the urban feeling. The street will be our main subject and our focal point. Then, in the middle ground, we mainly see the apartment buildings on the side of the street. Some of them are hidden behind a few trees and street lamps. In the background, nicely ending our perspective, we see a high building being under construction. This building can become a trap, because it has many floors and many details, but remember that it is in the background, so we have to find a way to simplify it. So, as you see, I start by doing a quick pencil sketch, blocking down the main shapes, paying attention to the proportions and to the perspective. And regarding the perspective, this is mainly one-point perspective, as we are looking in the direction of the street and the buildings on the side are simply placed along the street. These buildings, the street, the cars, and the street lamps will all converge to one vanishing point placed on the horizon line. The only element in the scene that actually needs to be sketched a bit in two-point perspective is the high building at the end of the street. Actually, only the lower part of it, because we see it from a side. So, by making the levels of the lower part of this building converge to a vanishing point far away to the left, just a little bit will do the trick. Also, I'm blocking down the position of a few cars. By sketching them with a few simple shapes, I'm more looking at their outline, at their shape and size on paper. It's important to make the foreground ones bigger than the background ones, to give more depth to the sketch. If you want to learn more about quickly sketching and painting cars with watercolor, I have a video dedicated to this on the channel, so you can check it out. At this stage, I like to do very simple sketches, more like guidelines for the watercolor painting, and we will be building up more details once we start painting with watercolor. So, at this point, the sketch is good enough for us to move on to the painting part. Watercolor painting can be very overwhelming. You have to pay attention to so many aspects, to choose the best color combination, to be careful with timing, with the amount of pigment versus water that you hold in your brush. Sometimes it's good to step back a bit and simplify the process where you can. One possible thing that you can do is to limit your color palette to the extreme of using only one color. So, let's paint this scene with one color only. Here, I have my own neutral tint made in advance by mixing a few primary colors. So I've used a warm red and a cool red, together with a warm and a cold blue, and with a warm yellow. Here's a picture with my exact pigments. I started by mixing an equal amount of red, of blue, and of yellow, and adjusted it until I got a dark gray that I liked. I might do a video on this subject. Let me know in a comment below if you are interested in this. It is very helpful to paint monochromatic with watercolor because you eliminate the problem of choosing the best color combination, taking care of not having muddy areas because you work with one color only. This allows you to really focus on the values, on the composition, and to generally observe the light easier. It is much easier to spot the changes in value in a black and white scene than in a colored one. A painting done with one color only leaves more space for imagination and has a very special charm to it. Coming back at our busy urban scene, I start by painting a light wash over the sky area with one of my Chinese bamboo brushes. First, I'm doing a simple wash over the sky. I also use a paper towel to remove some paint where the clouds are, and also from the light parts of the street lamps and from some parts of the building. As you see, the tall building is slightly lighter than the sky. Then, I continue with the same light wash over the rest of the scene, as anyway those areas have a darker value. Also, darkening a little bit the underside of the cloud on the left, as it is in the shadow. Now, I move to painting the buildings on the left that have a darker value. A side of them is in the shadow and the other one is in the light. I also remove some paint with my paper towel where the street sign will be, so I try to keep some highlights in the shadow area also. Now comes a very fun part, painting this building in the background that has many levels. It has many details because of the high number of floors that are exposed to the sun and create many small shadows and highlights. But being in the background, we have to find a way to simplify it. So, as you see, the way I chose to paint it is by taking advantage of the hair of my brush. As the brush isn't full of water, but only a bit damp, I managed to keep the hair of the brush into small groups and, in this way, quickly paint the different levels. So, in a way, it's kinda like having a group of small brushes and painting with all of them in the same time. The tower has an elliptic shape in plan, so I'm suggesting its form with curved lines. The floors from the left part of the building converge to a vanishing point that is far away to the left, so I keep in mind this when I'm painting and suggesting the floors. And as the paper is still a bit damp there on the tower, I come over with a round brush and add a few dark areas to suggest some of the shadows. Now that this building is finished, we can move on with adding a second watercolor wash over the middle ground buildings on the left. I'm darkening a few areas under the roof lines and suggesting some windows. And time to start painting the cars. Now we can zoom in a bit and focus on this area only. First, let's start with the car that is closest to us. I'm starting with a simple wash, staying inside the basic outline shape that we've sketched at the beginning of the video. I'm starting with a simple wet on dry wash, mainly over the darkest areas of the car, and slowly adding more pigment. Then, as the paper is still damp, I'm slowly introducing darker areas and letting the paint flow and create nice gradients. I also paint the wheels and the shadow under the car. This shadow is very important when painting cars with watercolor, or sketching cars in general, because it connects the car with the street, it grounds it. Always under a car there will be a shadow, because the light from the sun never gets there. I'm also removing paint with a clean damp brush to bring back a few highlights from the areas painted in shadow. Sometimes it's easier to do an even wash and then to come with a clean brush and bring back a few highlights, than to be very careful and always paint around the light areas. It doesn't work in all circumstances, but sometimes, like in this circumstance, it works very well. And with a brush and with clean water, I'm going over the lower part of the shadow under the car. In this way, the paint will travel down a bit and better connect with the street, also create a soft gradient. Keep in mind that my watercolor pad is a bit inclined, not too much, but enough to let the gravity do its part. Now I start painting the rest of the street with a simple light wash. I'm a bit careful to keep some highlights, for example the edge of the street on the left. This highlighted line or area follows the perspective of the street and converges to the same vanishing point. Also, starting to suggest the other cars from the scene and painting them using the same approach. Now that the first wash of the initial car dried, I'm coming with a new wash over, with slightly more pigment on the brush and darkening the areas that are in shadow. In this way, the contrast is really increased. Now, this car really starts to read as the focal point of the painting. Here we see the darkest values and the strongest contrast. In the same way, I will be painting a few more cars on this side of the street and also suggest a few on the other side. We finished painting the cars. Now we can start to suggest a few other entourage elements that compose the street and make it function properly. By this I mean circulation sign, street lamps, and so on. These elements also have the role of connecting the ground with the sky. They are vertical elements that start from the street and go up in the sky and make our eyes move around. So I'm taking again my Chinese bamboo brush and I'm starting to suggest a few trees. I'm again taking advantage of the stiff hair that this brush has. Then, switching again to my Winsor Newton Cotman round brush, I'm suggesting finer details, like the tree trunks, the street lamps, and very loosely the crane on top of the tall building at the end of the street. To see a list with all my supplies, check the description below the video. Don't forget to follow Color Art Emotion on the other social media platforms also. If you've enjoyed this video, let me know by liking it and subscribing to this channel. If you have any further questions or want to express your thoughts on the subject, write me a comment below and I will do my best to answer it. Take care and see you in the next video.